Up in Super Mario hitting bricks looking for mushrooms or cash. For Canelo, obviously at 168, he has been a bit of the smaller man at that weight class. And in the last couple of years has had trouble finishing opponents and getting guys out of there like he would have at 160 or 154. So you have a bit of the duality there. Both guys coming into this fight in the, let's say, twilight of their careers, or maybe twilight of their primes, however you want to look at it. Canelo is going to be, I think, 35. Terrence is 38. So you have a similar situation, different paths, and different struggles for both fighters. But when you look at who has to do more in this fight, it's clearly Terrence Crawford, as far as what he's giving up and sacrificing to win this third undisputed championship and to try to beat Canelo, who has only been beat twice in his career, one of which was Floyd Mayweather being slick and tagging Canelo with counter punches when Canelo missed. Being the smaller, lighter fighter and up there in age that was still able to take advantage of the youth and experience of Canelo Alvarez, but also just being a defensive maestro and able to counter off of that. Floyd is one of one. And then you have Dimitri Bivol, who was the bigger fighter, and the things that Canelo does very well didn't really hurt him too bad, right? The things that had carried Canelo up in division was his power and the ability to break an opponent down, maybe not stopping them in the early to mid part of fights, but working on them, wearing on them with that power, even losing rounds throughout the mid to first part of fight. Billy Joe Saunders fight comes to mind, where he potentially is losing a couple of those rounds and then finally finds the opening and has devastating power to overwhelm opponents. He couldn't do that at 175 with Dimitri Bivol. He had found the weight that he couldn't ascend to and his power could carry him through, or the style of fight that he had come accustomed to since the Gennady Golovkin fight. Being a lot more reserved with not only his punch count, but also his movement. Had seen a new burst to Canelo, really being defensively sound with his upper body and slipping punches, but looking for almost exclusive power punching to open up holes in the defense and then eventually finish fights. Now again, those are the only two guys to ever beat Canelo. Everybody else, regardless of the strategy, regardless of the skill, they got found out at a certain point. And that's why I'm saying Terrence Crawford may have to be absolutely perfect. And I'm not saying he can't do it, but there's only a couple of avenues that I think Terrence Crawford can take to win this fight. I don't see him coming up to 168 pounds and knocking Canelo Alvarez out. Let's be honest, that's going to be pretty difficult to do. Again, you're talking about a natural 140 pounder, maybe 147 pounder now, starting to build and get bigger. And as we've seen in pictures recently, here's Terrence Crawford. He looks like he's trying to fill into all of 168 pounds here. I mean, he probably weighs 183, 84 pounds. I mean, that's what he said. I think when I interviewed him, he was in the 180 pounds. So he's coming up in weight, and it looks like he's trying to put some heavy muscle mass on, which, okay, you know, you want to inflict some damage on Canelo. If we remember back their press conference, this is what he said to Canelo. This is not the greatest quality of video, but listen to this.
So when I beat you, is you going to be a nobody? When I stuff a mud hole in your asses, you're going to be a nobody. You're going to be just like everybody else. Watch. Watch. Claim shit that everybody else been saying since I moved to 147, I ain't fought nobody. Every last one of them. Stuff a mud hole in their ass and he going to be next. Watch.
So again, you know, you hear the tone of voice that Crawford is talking in, and he's not just a talker. He's not someone looking to sell a fight up there. I look at this as, again, when I look at the style of fight potentially Terrence Crawford's going to bring to Canelo, it looks like he wants to stand in front of him and push him back a little bit. Even in the press conferences they had, there was that pushing and shoving where Canelo kind of walked up on him and pushed Terrence back. And then the second press conference, Terrence Crawford pushed him back. So yeah, there's mind games going on there for sure, but Terrence looks like he wants to be able to push Canelo back, to inflict some power on Canelo. And I just don't know if that's the move here. Now again, I'm not a boxer. I'm not the one going inside the ropes, but the way I see this potentially working out for Terrence is simple, but insanely difficult. You have to be good at everything. And I just don't know if that's the right avenue. Like trying to push Canelo back is one thing. Trying to overwhelm him with volume like Dimitri Bivol did is definitely an idea, but again, you have to look at the factors surrounding that. You have to look at Bivol's size, right? His natural aptitude for volume punching. That is his strategy, that's his game, and it's usually done off the front foot. It's not counter punching, then following up with combinations. We've seen Bud as a great counter puncher, but leading the dance, and even in the Madrimov fight, it looked a little difficult for him to get going. If it takes you a while to get going against Canelo, you're just falling right into his game plan. Standing in front of him, you want to go flat-footed with Canelo Alvarez and just be in the pocket? That's not gonna, in my opinion, unless you're shooting inside the big looping shots of Canelo, because sometimes he will open up and hit some big looping shots around the guard. Standing in front of him is not the idea, at least not to me. But again, I'm just the commentator guy. I'm just the guy on YouTube, so maybe I don't know. But my point is, this is why I say Terence Crawford needs to be perfect, because I don't think he's knocking Canelo out, right? Does anyone believe that's the potential possibility here for a guy, Canelo Alvarez, that has probably the best chin in boxing? And we're going to watch a video in a second where Joe Rogan and Jim Lampley talk about Canelo and what makes him special and his defense and why he's never really been hurt ever. I just don't see that as a strategy. Then you look at what Terence has given up, right? Weight, size, him trying to make up the weight and size by putting the pounds on. This is Terence having to try to balance putting weight on versus still being explosive, still being able to have some mobility, and to be able to throw volume without getting tired at the newfound weight. This is why I say he has to be perfect. Meaning, you have to be able to box Canelo, move, be mobile with Canelo, throw volume with Canelo, be first with Canelo, not get driven back by Canelo's presence and just him walking through punches and trying to slip and use his head movement. I know I'm saying a lot of this stuff like it's a foregone conclusion. Canelo's going to walk forward. Canelo's going to be in front of you. Canelo is going to try to walk you down. Like, yeah, that's for sure what I think Canelo's going to do. But to beat him, you can't let any of it happen. And then you have to let volume go. You can't make this a Canelo Alvarez circa the last 3 years type of fight where, sure, you're a mover like William Skull, but you're not throwing any punches. You're on your back foot, and Canelo's not giving you any respect, and he's just walking you down. That can't happen. Also, you can't really stand in front of Canelo like Jaime Munguia did and try to trade with him, or else you're going to get caught, and he'll maybe put you down, maybe not finish you, but he'll hurt you and put you down. Or if he can't catch Terence Crawford clean because Crawford does a great job in his pocket presence and his defense inside of the phone booth, Canelo's going to try to punch him in the arms. He's going to try to punch him in the shoulders. And while Bivol waved the finger at him, gave him the Matumbo finger wag and said, no, that didn't work with me. Yeah, that's because Bivol's a natural 200-pound, 210-pound human fighting at 175. That's why that didn't work. Terence Crawford is not that. So all these things adding up in my mind, they just tell me Terence has to be perfect. He has to be able to do everything versus Canelo. And if anybody has the skill to do it, it's Terence Crawford. And let's not act like Canelo is beyond getting beat here, right? There is a path to victory for Terence, and to me, it's through decision win. And this is why I say he's going to have to be a bit mobile. He's going to have to take it to Canelo at times, like you've seen him talk about in these pressers and, stomping a mud hole and walking forward on Canelo. He's going to have to do that at times, right? You can't just get run over for 12 rounds and expect to win, or you can't be on the back foot for 12 rounds and expect to beat Canelo. But Terence has an avenue where he can outland Canelo, keep himself safe, throw in pockets, circle, back to range, back to the pocket, jab on the way in, back to range, back to the pocket, jab on the way in, and rinse and repeat. But I want to take more of a deeper dive for people that know a lot more than I do. So let's take a listen to Jim Lampley talking on the Joe Rogan Experience. We've actually never done a Joe Rogan Experience breakdown on the channel. So I don't know how this is going to go with YouTube, but let's take a look and see what he had to say and what Joe had to say about the fight.
About Canelo versus Crawford.
Yeah.
Do you think Terence Crawford can beat Canelo Alvarez?
Yeah, I think he can win.
Okay.
I don't know if he's going to win, but I think he can win.
So
but he's going to have to.
That is the answer that I feel like everybody is having right now. Terence can win.
Gusto mong mag-relax pero di mo magawa. Gusto mong mag-relax pero di mo magawa.
Hindi makarelax dahil sa sakit ng katawan? Mag-Alaxan FR! May relief to relax formula laban sa sakit ng katawan. Para game ulit bukas. Pag totoo ang relief, totoo ang relax. Dahil
Totoo ang relax, walang sakit ng katawan. Totoo ang relax, mag-Alaxan FR.
alagang Unilab yan.
I just don't know if he's going to because of the uphill battle he's fighting. Up in weight, and the things you need to do up in weight are going to be tough stylistically with what Canelo brings. The way you fight versus the way Canelo fights, it kind of does tailor to Canelo if you want to be a counter puncher and just look for openings in exchange, the questions around the weight, all that. I feel like Joe is kind of saying what a lot of people are saying is that he can, but will he?
He's going to have to box a brilliant fight.
Okay, what kind of a fight? I'm going to get to that. I asked the great Larry Merchant,
What did he say?
94 years old, living on Ocean Boulevard in Santa Monica, looking out at the ocean, reflecting on all the amazing things he did. And I asked Larry,
Dude, can anybody set the scene better than Jim Lampley? What a legend, dude. And I'll say this, sidebar in this video, just getting to do a little 2-minute segment that I got to do with Jim on the DAZN broadcast in New York from Louis Armstrong Stadium was so sick. He was such a professional. I remember we did the test and like right before we were gonna go live, and he said something like, I was, you know, doing my fill to intro him before we ever went on the pay-per-view, and I said to him, I said describing him, I go, I'm here with the GOAT, the best broadcaster in all of combat sports, or whatever I said. And when we were done, he came back and he said, I love what you said. That was awesome. Just make sure you call me a blow-by-blow guy. And I loved that because, like, it was one, instructional for me, and two, it's exactly what he should be called. He's not just a commentator. He's not just a broadcaster. He is the GOAT to me, blow-by-blow commentator, broadcaster in combat sports or in boxing over the last however long, right? That was really cool of him to do. So anyway, Jim sets the scene like no other.
looking out at the ocean, reflecting on all the amazing things he did. And I asked Larry, I said, do you think Terrence Crawford has a chance to beat Canelo Alvarez? And Larry said, Jim, did Ray Leonard get an official decision victory over Marvelous Marvin Hagler? And I said, yes, he did. He said, well, if Ray Leonard could beat Marvelous Marvin Hagler, then Terrence Crawford can beat Canelo Alvarez. And I said, why do you say that? He said, same equation. Get in, get out. Get in, get out.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. He's got to figure the angles and the approaches that...
Yeah, you know, I don't hate what Jim is saying here. This is his talking through the storytelling of Larry Merchant, who said this, but it's a little bit of a different fight, right? Like, when you saw Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvelous Marvin Hagler, that fight, Sugar had to answer different questions. Yes, get in, get out, but you're talking about Marvin Hagler, who was still, at that point, still a great switch hitter, could definitely bite down on the mouthpiece and swing, but he had volume for days. His output was crazy. He had great feet. He himself was able to cut angles and use his feet to switch and be in front of you the entire time. Ray had to, like, you know, Jim is saying there, Ray had to get in, get out, but that wasn't because of just the power that Marvin was bringing. It was the volume it was bringing. It was the aggression he was bringing. It was him being able to cut off the ring and switch stances to do it. Canelo can cut the ring. Canelo can hit you with power, but he had nowhere near, over the last 3 years, the volume that Marvin Hagler had. So in that sense, you can look at Terrence Crawford and be like, okay, well, that does leave the opening, right? Get in, get out. Where Terrence needs to be a heavy volume puncher here, or at least someone that's going to make his combinations count and then not be there for the return, not be there for the receipt, as they say. He can definitely do that, or at least ideally he can do that. And that's where I'm talking about being perfect. That's where I'm talking about he can have moments, because Canelo isn't Marvin Hagler in the sense of what Jim is saying here, right? Being able to get in, get out. And he is right also with, you know, Sugar Ray being the lighter guy, being the mover. And I just don't know if the comparison makes sense, because that's not what Terrence's game necessarily is either. He's going to have to change and be a little bit more Sugar Ray-esque in this fight, and that is a path to success. Now again, can he be that? And also, how does that affect him fighting at this weight, a weight he's never been at by a lot bigger difference than Sugar Ray had when he fought Marvin Hagler? So it's a little bit of a different situation, but I like the idea of, again, being mobile, stick and move. You got to be able to keep Canelo at bay when you are doing your work. That's the difference to me, is like, I just don't see an ability for Terrence Crawford to be a back foot fighter for 12 rounds and win this fight. He's going to have to, at some point, push Canelo back just a bit and get him on the defensive, and then let those combinations fall.
will allow him to step in, land to the body, or occasionally upstairs, and then get out.
Yeah.
Before he's facing any damage.
Right.
That's what Ray did so effectively against Hagler. And it frustrated Hagler. And the more you frustrate the opponent, the better off you are.
Yeah. Canelo has such unique skills, and one of the weird things that he does that very few people since Rocky Marciano does is he punches your arms.
Yes.
He brutalizes your arms.
He's another brilliant guy. He has the greatest punch resistance in the sport. You know,
Now, again, yeah, I mean, by the way, Joe knows a lot more boxing than people give him credit for, especially old school boxing, because Joe was a fan. Even though, you know, he had that big tirade on ESPN about, who was he talking to? Lou DiBella, where he was like, boxing is getting swallowed, your sport is one-dimensional, and he was cooking a little bit back then. But, yeah, I mean, Canelo's ability to target different parts of the body to try to get to his end goal has been something he's relied on in the last couple of years, right? Again, you go to the Canelo versus Callum Smith fight, and that's kind of the way he broke Callum Smith down. I think he bruised up or maybe